Hello, welcome to our Families in Crisis podcast. And we are so blessed to have you here on this podcast because this is our 10 Saint series part two. And I'm going to bring on with me on the screen just in a second here our board president, Mickey Kelly. Mickey, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Hi, Anne. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is an exciting one because we're going to be talking about Blessed Carlo Acutis. And so he is the younger saint. I believe he passed away in 2005 when he was only 16 years old. And he's the patron saint of anything associated with the internet. And so for families in crisis, he's really a perfect saint and he's a role model for younger people too. Mickey, I believe he was right around your age, wasn't he?
If he's alive today, Anne, actually, he would be. And he actually is on the verge of being one of the first uh, millennials to be canonized as a saint, which, let's face it, I think this is something that the Catholic Church needs. If you look at how many millennials are not practicing the faith, if you also look at the young people, too. I honestly, and even when St. John Paul the Great said, when he in his papacy, everyone can be a saint. It wasn't just for the clergy. It was for the key word was everybody can be a saint. Everybody. You, myself, clergy, whatever. All it takes is to think more of others and less of yourself.
That's right. And everything that I'm reading and hearing about Carlo Acutis is just amazing because at a very young age, he had a real devotion to the Holy Eucharist. And I understand that he even developed a website where about all of the different Eucharistic miracles. And a matter of fact, I just did a talk up in Western New York at a parish where they did a whole display on or Blessed Carlo Acutis because he's a role model for younger people. And like you said, if he were alive, he isn't he would have been a millennial if he were alive today in his 30s. I would like to read his bio if I could too. Now, this one is from the Franciscan media website for St. Carlo Acutis. And it says here that he was born in London and raised in Milan. Carlo's wealthy parents were not particularly religious. Upon receiving his first communion at age 7, Carlo became a frequent communicant, making a point of praying before the tabernacle before or after every Mass. In addition to St. Francis of Assisi, Carlo took several other younger saints as his models, including Bernadette Subaru, Jacinta and Francisco Marta, and Dominic Savio. At school, Carlo tried to comfort friends whose parents were undergoing divorce, as well as stepping in to defend disabled students from bullies. After school hours, he volunteered his time with the city's homeless and destitute. Considered a computer geek by some, Carlos spent 4 years creating a website dedicated to cataloging every reported Eucharistic miracle around the world. He also enjoyed films, comics, soccer, and playing popular video games. Diagnosed with leukemia, Carlo offered his sufferings to God for the intentions of the sitting Pope, which was Benedict XVI, and the entire church. His longtime desire to visit as many sites of Eucharistic miracles as possible was cut short by his illness. Carlo died in 2006 and was beatified in 2020. Excuse me that I said 2005. So 2006 was when he died. As he wished, Carlo was buried in Assisi at St. Mary Major's Chapel of the Stripping, where Francis had returned his clothes to his father and began a more radical following of the gospel. Among the thousands present for Carlo's beatification at Assisi Basilica of St. Francis were many of his childhood friends. Presiding at the beatification service, Cardinal Agostino Vallini praised Carlo as an example of how young people can use technology to spread the gospel, to reach as many people as possible, and help them know the beauty of friendship with the Lord. His liturgical feast is celebrated on October 12th, and a reflection is that Carlo Acutis did not strive to become famous, but rather to cooperate as generously as possible with God's grace. That journey brought him many experiences, but they were all united by a burning desire to serve God and others as generously as possible. So, isn't that a wonderful bio?
And you really laid everything out perfectly about Blessed Carlo Acutis. And I think one of the things that I have seen, especially as he's gaining popularity, there's no question about that. And like I say at the beginning of this broadcast, this is someone I think a lot of Catholic millennials should look up to, or even millennials in general, and younger people. And you know, this is like I really think this is a coming of age canonization in the works. That especially, you think about this, we have a patron saint for we have a patron saint for 21st century technology. And the fact that he used his, his knowledge of computer programming, to create a website for the Eucharist, that really says a lot. And like that is just like remarkable to me. And and of course too, like what a time to also select him because he helped people that were going through, divorces. And I thought to myself, what a perfect person to have in, for this 10 part 2 of this 10-part saint series. And well, soon to be saint, but I think in God's eye, he is a saint. And I really look forward to seeing, really seeing, this progress a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, Mickey, but I really think that there's a much greater awareness of him out there. I know in our own archdiocese, I've just seen, social media posts and people who are doing talks on him. I believe his own mother came to the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And Mickey, am I correct? Did you meet her?
Absolutely.
You
So what
met her.
happened
Tell us
was,
about that.
sure. So my girlfriend and I, we were attending the national. It was actually like the local Eucharist Congress that they were having in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And Blessed Carlo Acutis' mother was one of the main speakers, and she actually spoke last. I thought she was the closer, for like, a Major League Baseball team's bullpen. You got to save the best for last. And Mrs. Acutis was remarkable too. Like she's really laid everything out about her son. And Archbishop Perez actually said that, you are a walking relic because of the fact that she bore a soon to be saint. Even though he died young, but he made an impact, you know, to the poor, marginalized, and those that have been afflicted by our culture. And what a remarkable experience to meet the parent of a saint. It's not the first time I met someone that has ties with, someone that's a saint in the church. Because I also met the daughter of Saint Gianna Molla, and it was someone that I believe we covered before. If not, we will. I'm sure we're going to cover her sooner or later. But you know, I thought to myself, wow. I mean, I could be. I probably encounter future saints myself. I just don't even realize it. I mean, like I always think of that line from the book from Queen Esther. You are born for this moment. And what a time that we're living in. Especially a lot of us that got an opportunity to meet the mother of a future saint. You know, there's some power to it. And what what a remarkable thing. I mean, like what happened. So long story short, what happened was we were about to leave and we saw a mob in the sacristy of Our Lady Czestochowa Shrine. And Hannah and I, we were looking at each other like, let's go check it out. We go in, long and behold, the mother of a future saint was in there, you know, having a captivating audience, among the clergy, among all these people. And and of course, Hannah and I, we were looking at each other like, it's a good thing we stuck around. Yeah. And what happened was we got in line and we were fortunate enough because they're ready to close it off for like interviews. So we were able to get in get her picture and everything. And I introduce myself, I introduce her, and she says she'll pray for us. And I thought that was like, oh golly, I'll never forget that, Ann. I mean, that's something that like I want to treasure for the rest of my life.
Oh my goodness. You
I
had
made a lot of people
the
jealous. That's okay, but
yeah, you had a future saint's mother say that she would pray for you and your girlfriend. Wow, that is big. And, I have to say, I mean, he's definitely a newer, Blessed, isn't he? I mean, he came really into the picture, I think, in the last maybe 3, 4 years where been a lot more on him. I believe that his mother is traveling around to different dioceses and archdioceses and, speaking to groups just like she did to our archdiocese. So we're really, really blessed, aren't we? But the one thing that really stands out to me too about Carlo Acutis is his joy. I don't know about you, Mickey, but I've seen videos of him when he was a little boy where he's just like laughing and seeming so happy. And yet he had a serious side too, didn't he? Because he was smart enough to understand the Eucharist, smart enough to build this website on the Eucharistic miracles. And he really wanted other people to be able to understand how relevant, important, and wonderful the Holy Eucharist is. And isn't that a perfect time? Because right now, as you know, the United States Conference of Bishops is really doing a big promotional effort right now for people to understand the Eucharist and to celebrate the Eucharist. And next summer in Indiana, I believe there's going to be the National Conference of the Eucharist. And I'm really looking forward. I hope to go to it because don't you think that Carlo Acutis, Blessed Carlo Acutis, is the person that we should intercede to for this whole endeavor? Would you agree with me, Mickey? I mean, this is pretty big.
absolutely, Ann. You actually hit on a couple points, and I'm glad you actually mentioned that too, because there is a national Eucharistic revival taking place next July 2024. So the good news is for high school, college students listening to this, you can go. It's for everybody. And I do agree with you, and I know we've been going back and forth about this, and we hope and pray that we're there. If we have to fundraise it, so be it. But I think I don't think there's a force on earth that's going to keep us from going there. Because I feel like if I feel like we could actually maybe do like a special session for the podcast about the National Eucharistic Revival. I'm really looking forward to that. Now to go back on the track, go back on track a little bit, and I was actually looking at some of the inspiring quotes by um, Carlo Acutis, Acutis, and one quote that really stands out to me. It's funny we're talking about the Eucharist. He said, "The more Eucharist we receive, the more we will become like Jesus, so that on earth we will have a foretaste of heaven." I think he knew what he was talking about, especially with the topic of with him as the main subject. He did not just create this website like he's like a stroke of a genius or anything. What we have to understand is, if you have a devotion to the Eucharist, you have to share that with others. Likewise, with many of the saints. You have some saints that are devoted to the Blessed Mother. You have some saints that are devoted to the Holy Rosary. And then you have some that are donated to the Eucharist. And oftentimes, too, like some of these saints would have, that would talk about a lot of these things. And I think what really stands out to many, like that stands out to me about many of the saints of the church is that these people, they have a story to tell. Why? Why is it that they have a devotion to the Eucharist? I mean, there's no question in my mind. If Dr. Scott Hahn were to have a canonization process in 20 years, like say if he died, there's no question in my mind. One of the things that will come up in the investigation is that he knew that the Eucharist would bring him closer to Jesus. And ultimately, everything, all the misconceptions, the misinformation he received during his formation as a Protestant minister, you know, drew him to the truth. As St. John Henry Newman would say, you know, to every Protestant that is rich in history, they fail to be Protestant or something around those lines. I know I hope that none of the priests from the oratory would gang up on me on that one, but they can understand where I'm coming from with this. But honestly, I think what really stands out too, the other quote that really stands out to me is, by standing before the Eucharistic Christ, we become holy. And I feel like every time we receive the Eucharist, we carry Jesus with us in everything we do. No matter what our occupation is, no matter what stage in life we are, every time we receive Jesus, we carry a monstrous with us. And that must be shared with everyone that we encounter. For Blessed Carlo Acutis, he too knew that every time he received Jesus, he wanted to share that with others. He wanted them to know that there was a story to tell and that people were looking for the end to meet the need. And that was Jesus. And as a matter of fact, in the Philadelphia area at Malvern Retreat House, there's a beautiful exhibit that actually brings the website Carlo Acutis will create, you know, from the website that kind of brought it to life, so to speak. And it's remarkable. And if you have an opportunity to do so, the next time you're on retreat at Malvern, which is outside of Philadelphia, about 30, 40 minutes away, depending where you are, go to the exhibit. You'll learn a lot. Well, while you're on retreat, of course, too. So, and I'm sure the grounds director would say, "Oh, don't forget to check this down." Because I actually knew someone that did the graphic design for the whole exhibit, and it's just amazing too. It goes from the beginning to the most recent, which happened actually in Hartford, Connecticut.
That's so good to know. Mickey, that's news to me. So I have to go over to the Malvern Retreat House and see that. And I want to invite everybody else to do that too. But we're really unraveling, on this podcast, I think a lot about or I should say, Blessed Carlo Acutis. He's not quite a saint of the church yet, but
Maybe in God's eye he is, but
in
I
God's
digress.
eyes, right. But I mean, I think for the people who are watching this podcast, the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation audience, which are families and individuals in crisis. And you might say to yourself, like, well, what does this blessed Carlo Acutis, what does he have to do with me in terms of um, my family life, right? What I'm going through. Now, remember what we read in the bio. Who did he care so much about? Were people affected by divorce that he would pray for and minister to his classmates whose families were breaking up. So isn't that a beautiful thing? There's Mickey's cat. Who would guess that we would see a cat on a Catholic podcast there? Hello.
Don't worry, he's Catholic.
He's Catholic, huh? So, but anyway, I just think it's a wonderful thing. And I just want to read that last part again of the bio that it says that he did not strive to become famous, but rather to cooperate as generously as possible with God's grace. The journey brought him many experiences, but they were united by a burning desire to serve God and others as generously as possible. So, isn't that amazing that he was just very wise for his age? You think about he died when he was only a teenager. Now, Mickey, I know you're a Catholic school teacher. Mickey teaches at Roman Catholic High School in Philadelphia. So you're around people that age every day. I mean, I don't know if this is happening right now, but if any of your students were to be watching this podcast, would you have any message for them in terms of Blessed Carlo Acutis? Because he can be a real role model for them to get to know the Eucharist and to love their faith.
Yes, and I feel like, well, they may get extra credit, the moment they probably see this. And if they get this right, if I might have to issue a pop quiz, to see what I said about him. But to answer your question, actually, I would say that I think now is the time that we need more, you know, examples, like, holy examples from younger men and women that could appeal to them. For St. John Paul the Great, he appealed to a whole generation of Catholics, especially those that have been victimized by the culture of death. by communism, and the list really goes on. I think for a lot of us, we have some we have something, so I'm sorry, I should rather say we have someone to really look up to, especially like, for younger people. And yes, we mentioned earlier, he played video games, he was he plays sports, and that's something a lot of teenagers do today. They play games, they play sports, and there are some that like to do that like to enjoy the outdoors. And let's face it, I really think that he is someone that we should all look up to, especially for my students. I think another quote that I actually came across that I came across. Our goal must be infinite, not finite. The infinite is our homeland. Heaven has been waiting for us forever. There's our goal in life. And he did at a young age.
Yeah, he was just an amazing young man. I mean, can you imagine if you would ever have had the opportunity to meet him? But you know what? He had such a faith that, and I think we can take this with us when we receive the Eucharist. If we really believe in everything about our faith, especially the Holy Eucharist, we understand that when we go to Mass, that we are in communion with all of the communion of saints. So that would include Blessed Carlo Acutis and all the saints. So when we receive the Eucharist, we are receiving Jesus, but we are in communion and as close as we'll ever get to meeting and the saints and their spirits. And so I think we just have to keep that in mind that Carlo Acutis wanted us to know that. He wanted us to know that when you receive the Eucharist, that is an opportunity for you to unite your crosses to him. Now, I'm going to direct this to our audience again, families in crisis, everybody who's watching this that's going through a challenging time, is that I'm inviting you to learn more about this wonderful, blessed Carlo Acutis because, you know, he's definitely not a saint. How could I say this? He was a joyful person, okay? He's definitely doesn't have a boring life at all. You know, you might think to read about some of the saints that some of the facts of their lives are just kind of not really all that interesting to read about. But if you really read about and learn about Carlo Acutis, especially if you're our younger person, he's an excellent role model for you. So do go online and learn more. And I want to read a couple more of his quotes. One, he says that to to the Lord, I can always confide anything. I can complain, question him in silence, and tell him what I don't understand. So isn't that interesting to read that too? That he had a really deep relationship with God in the inside of his heart in his prayers. And maybe even his mother didn't know quite how holy he was. Mickey, I'm sure you can talk about that. The other quote that I have is from Carlo Acutis. He says that what does it matter if you can win 1,000 battles if you cannot win against your own corrupt passions? It doesn't matter. The real battle is with ourselves. My goodness. I mean, that does not sound like words coming from a teenager, does it? Mickey, I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that. He was so wise, wasn't he?
He has profound wisdom for, a young man at his age. And I think the second one that you mentioned, Anne, I thought that probably hit me the most. The reason I say that is because, I think often I see this a lot too. I mean, it's not just because like I'm not just saying like as a teacher and all that, but I see this a lot with, people I encounter and, I like to people watch every so often. And there have been times I've been guilty of this as well. How every so often I agree with him. We do like in the end we're bowing ourselves, like our egos. And I know like it's like one thing you have a bad day and all that, but if it's constant, you just have to ask yourself like, what on earth am I doing? You know, And for Blessed Carlo Acutis, he knows full well that, especially with today's day and age, we see that, like, we see that our demeanors are are on display, and we have to be very careful with how we conduct ourselves, whether it be in the classroom, in the workforce, at home, or if we're out, socializing with family and friends, because it makes a difference that we can't act like have their like our nose up in the air, saying like acting like a big shot. But there's like a time like you want to be there for people, you want to help out, you want to like you know think less of yourself and more of others. And that's what we need to do.
Yes, amen. And I have to admit, I mean, I'm not an expert on Blessed Carlo Acutis, but I've read enough and heard enough about him that I want to learn more. And I think for all of you who are watching and or listening to this podcast, I mean, that's an invitation for you too to learn more. Now, remember, his feast day is October 14th. Now, we're taping this right now in October of 2023. I believe this is airing on Thanksgiving, if I'm correct. If it is, happy Thanksgiving to all of you. If it winds up not airing on Thanksgiving, I hope it was wonderful. But I do believe that it's the last Thursday of 2023. So I hope you're having a blessed day. But remember that with Carlo Acutis, that he's the patron saint of obviously, I think for younger people, those who suffer with disease because he died of leukemia. And for sure, anything to do with the internet or online. With our foundation, we hear about a lot of people who have addictions to, something like maybe pornography. I mean, obviously, I think Carlo Acutis would be someone to intercede because he was the patron saint of the internet. So I definitely think that's something that you can look into. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our Filino Nonnatus YouTube channel, which is where you're watching this, or Facebook. And we have a lot of other podcasts. And of course, we'll be back again next month for our 10 Saint series, part 2. So, Mickey, did you have any final words before we end this podcast?
Honestly, and I would like to just say for everyone that is watching this, learn more about this saint is like for every person that we talk about on this saint series, it doesn't hurt to read up on them. Like there's books out there about them. There, as a matter of fact, now like especially with Blessed Call Acutis, there is something out there you can watch. Like I think there's like a documentary somewhere on YouTube we can watch. You can watch, so you can learn more about this thing, go a little deeper. And then you're also going to have. I also suggest too, you know, think about some ways. How can you mirror that saint? I'm not saying try to be like him or her, but how can you take what he or she has done and apply it with your own faith journey? And I don't think it's that hard to do. And as we are bringing this to a close, I do want to bring. I do like to read a quote from Blessed Carlo Acutis as we are bringing this episode to a close. All people are born as originals, but many die as photocopies. And I think what has happened today is we tend to think, oh, I'm going to be like this person, you be like that. But in God's eye, your mission is to be who you are and be well, as St. Francis de Sales reminds us. So, do you want to be a copycat or photocopy, or would you rather be an original?
Wow. I love how you ended that. Thank you for that quote. And you know what? Also, that invitation I make to all of you every single month on this podcast, make your free pastoral appointment with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. You will get help from a Mercedarian priest, either in person or online. All you need to do is go to nonnatus.org. Thank you so much. And Mickey, thank you again. God bless. We'll see all of you next month. See you then. The St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith was founded in 2015 by the Mercedarian Religious Order with a mission to make pastoral outreach to families in crisis. The friars came together after attending the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia with hopes of creating a foundation which could help those families and individuals who have faced tough times and need to know that the Church cares and is there to help. Since that time when we were founded, the foundation has helped hundreds of families by offering prayer, priestly consultations, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. Whether it is something to do with divorce or separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, relationship issues, or other crisis, the foundation has seen lives transformed through the services we provide. Pope Francis has referred to our world as a field hospital, where there are a great deal of individuals and families who feel abandoned and they need the special outreach of those who truly care and wish to show the face of God to others. As a foundation, that is what we do every day, and we're grateful to people like you who help to make a difference for families in crisis. Please pray for us and for our mission. Would you consider a one-time or recurring gift? Please go to nonnatus.org to donate. Thank you sincerely from all of us at the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith.